Hey gang, John Backrelli here with the Lake St. Clair Fishing Report, brought to you by Sportsmen's Direct. It is Thursday, March 13th. Water temperature at Belle Isle has upticked to about 37 degrees, and I've been kind of watching that, and it's kind of bouncing all over the place. I think just have to do with the sunshine and the wind direction and everything. It's kind of bouncing around, but the highest I've seen it up to was 38. And last week it was at 32 still, so it's still pretty darn cold right now. And that's pretty evident because I did the drive again today, and doing the drive around the lake, there were a lot of places that had been open earlier in the week and that had skimmed back over with maybe up to a half an inch of ice in some places. So the lake water is still really cold. And when we go down below freezing at night, it's still skimming over, even though our daytime highs have been so warm and the sun's been out and everything. The lake temps are still really cold, and there's still quite a bit of ice out there. So, and that's what we're going to talk about next is what parts of the lake are open, what parts of the lake are still closed, and boat docks and all that good stuff. So, not as much of a fishing report, just because this is kind of like really the in-between time for a whole lot of people. Although there are still some guys that are still walking on the hard water, and there are some guys that are putting their boats in now, but we'll get to that in a second. So drove up to the north end, all the way up to the raft, and the raft is still frozen, and it's frozen out probably a good, from the raft, it's probably over a half mile of ice straight out looking that way. Coming back around over to Fairhaven to the boat launch, and there were guys that were out from the boat launch out there. The boat launch is still frozen, and you still got quite a bit of ice out in front, so you're not getting a boat in there unless it's an airboat right now. Coming around to Bobby Mac's, looking out there, this is where most of the guys were fishing. They had come on somewhere between Bobby Mac's and over at the raft. And there were we shouldn't say a lot, there was about a dozen guys there. I was there about noon, so, and a lot of guys do follow that early on and early off routine that I was talking about. I told you a 10 o'clock rule. These guys were really pushing it. They were out there around noon. It was really warm, and the ice was really getting soft on top, and you could see that it was really honeycombed out there. But there is quite a bit of thickness out there still, so, I'm not judging anybody, but there was a time when I would have been one of those guys out there. I used to pride myself on being the first guy on and last guy off every year. But with age comes a little bit of wisdom, and comes a few bad experiences thrown in there. And then of course you got to run the tackle store. So, and do all these reports for you guys, which takes a lot of time. But there were definitely guys still out there, and so they were obviously still getting on. Now, Bouvier Bay out there is mostly honeycombed ice, and there was a lot of open water. And on the drive back down and around, compared to the last week when I did the report, it was mostly ice covered. This time around, driving back, it was mostly open water. So there was a lot of open water, really, other than up in that corner there between Bobby Mac's and then all the way up in the raft and across from there. So that's all pretty open. Now, when you come back down towards Selfridge, it changes a little bit. Out in front of Cotton Road, it's all frozen out there still. Let's talk about the boat launch there at Selfridge. The launch itself was just freshly frozen over again, probably not very thick. But unfortunately, when you get out in the front of the boat launch, between the boat launch and Selfridge, there was still considerable ice. Probably several hundred yards of ice straight out from the boat launch, and then extending all the way down by the barracks, and then all the way up just past Cotton Road. So still quite a bit of ice in that Anchor Bay area by that Selfridge boat launch. Now, coming further south to the Harley boat launch. When I'd gone to the Harley boat launch first thing this morning, was all open. There were guys that had launched out there and were fishing, but there were no docks in this morning. Later today, they put 3 docks in. So there are now 3 docks to launch at the Harley Ensign boat launch, and guys are using them. And there's guys fishing right there in the harbor for perch. There were guys headed out and trolling for walleyes a little further to the south. But the good news is there's 3 docks in there at Harley, so you can launch now. So that's a big deal. This is pretty early for them to get those docks in. Be very careful if you're going out. This time of the year is when you get a lot of stuff floating around. This is also got to remember our water levels are extremely low right now. So pay attention to that. They're down quite a bit from where they were last year. Now coming back a little bit further south into the Lake St. Clair Metro Park. On Sunday, I was actually out on the ice off of the flagpole or the beach, the day sail area, and I was out in about 8 feet of water. So I was pretty far out. We were pretty close to the open water out there. And today, looking out that way from the day sail, there's no ice. It's all gone. So that ice over on that side of the point is completely gone. If you come back around and go into the Metro Park itself, some of the basins there are probably mostly ice covered, although most of that ice is really honeycomb and rotten. Once you get over to the lakes, over to the marsh area, that's all open. Guys were shore fishing at the marsh. They have 2 docks in at the Metro Park, so you can launch off of 2 docks. And the Black Creek going out to the lake was open enough that you should be able to get a boat through there now. So it was open all around the island, and pretty much where everybody drives around on Black Creek is on either side of that island, and that was open, and it looked like it was open all the way out to the lake now and that Black Creek. So you should be able to launch there as well. And you do have some shore fishing opportunities now with Black Creek being opened and with the marsh area being open. Also for you kayakers, you can get in there and kayak around for the panfish back there as well. Let's see. Rain coming this weekend, the weather this weekend. It's going to be really warm. We're going to get a really strong south wind, it looks like, on Saturday, and temperatures up around 70 degrees. And they're forecasting, the numbers keep going up on the rain. So now we're up to about an inch of rain. It looks like most of it's going to come at night. But still, if we're really warm, like in the 50s at night, and we get an inch of rain, that rain's going to really do a number on the rest of that ice out there. It's just going to flow right through it with that honeycomb. And I mean, we could have most of the ice gone after this weekend, but we'll see. I mean, devils are always in the details, but we'll see what happens there. But this should be a pretty significant event to get rid of most of the ice that's left out there on the lake. Let's see. For big fish for the week last week, I only had one. Cedric brought in an 11-inch rock bass, so we broke the 1-pound mark on the Rockies. So he's the new leader in that rock bass division, and that was really one of the only real small fish that we had for all the different categories for the season. So I was kind of happy to see that big Rocky come in, and maybe in the next day or two now, with the ice pulling away and the shoreline warming up, maybe we'll get another big Rocky or two, or big crappie or big perch that'll come in here. But the contests are almost over. They end at the end of the business on the 15th. So just a couple of days left here for all the different contests. They are getting a really nice mixed bag of fish up on the St. Clair River right now. It sounds like that they do have a dock in up near the Dairy Queen up in Algonac. Guys are fishing up by the Black. They're getting a mixed bag. This time of the year, it's a pretty unique fishery up there. They get whitefish, and the whitefish are just huge. Huge whitefish, cohos, walleye, steelhead, and I believe they also get some lake trout up there at this time of the year as well. So while that water is really cold, but just kind of a really unique situation up there that you can go out and catch that variety of fish, most of them being some sort of silverfish other than the walleye that are mixed in up there. Shore opportunities are opening up and down the lake. After this rain, hopefully more are going to open up and be able to get those long rods out and start chasing those perch. It's usually quite a while before these fish actually spawn this time of the year. With the water temperature as close to freezing as it is, for perch, they really like to get into the mid-40s before they spawn. And a lot of times you need to see some weed growth because they are a broadcast spawner, so they are going to be spawning over newly emergent weeds. So that's one of the key things, is find where those weeds are coming up, and you're going to find where those fish are going to be spawning at. Right now, they're just on kind of a feeding binge before they spawn. As far as, well, let's talk a little bit about the satellite image and talk about safety. It sounds like the reports I was getting today is that there was a lot of ice at the mouth of the Detroit River. I mean, a lot of ice. So that ice has got to work its way down through. It most likely came from over there on that Canadian side, or it's probably some of that big sheet that blew out from Metro that went out and then went over to Canada and then is sliding down that Canadian shoreline. But if we look at the satellite images, I'm going to talk a little bit. It's kind of hard to see what's going on Lake St. Clair, but you can really get a good view of what's going on up on Lake Huron. And you'll see that over time, as we scroll through these images, that ice up on Lake Huron on the Canadian side slowly was breaking away, and now it's extending out from the shoreline with a big gap of open water. And you probably have got like 100 miles of shoreline over there with ice that extends out several miles. If we get the right wind and that big ice sheet kind of spins and comes down and goes into the mouth of the St. Clair River, we could see a pretty significant ice situation up there. So, and like I was talking about, that ice that was over on the Canadian side has come down and is now in the mouth of the Detroit River. So here's the rule of thumb for this early fishing, guys. If you're fishing the rivers, you want to fish upstream from where you're launching at. And for you guys that do this all the time, I know you're going to say, yeah, of course, duh, right? Well, for the guys that haven't done it before, it's really easy to make the mistake of launching and going downstream. And the reason why you don't want to do that is because if there is ice coming down and you go downstream, you're not going to be able to make it back to extract your boat, okay? And we're not talking about just kind of a little inconvenience. If you get into one of these significant ice flows and they can really completely, if they can block the flow off of the river, they can definitely block the boat off from getting in to where you need to. The other thing is, these aren't just like little pieces of ice a lot of times. These can be like icebergs, and they can be a story or two high. And with the geometry of those things, they can get underneath your boat. You can get crushed between a couple of them. Your boat can get flipped. You could do a lot of damage. You can just have a really bad day. Okay, so just bear that in mind, and you generally don't have to worry about that if you go upstream from your launch site, because you're going to run into that ice flow, or you're going to see that ice flow coming, and then you can stay ahead of it and move down to your extraction point and get out safely. So that's all I wanted to say about that. We still got significant ice out there, and it is moving around, and it's going to make its way through the river system, both the St. Clair River and the Detroit River. And until it's completely gone, you do have to think that way, okay? So with that said, I think that's all I've got for you guys this week. Open water is here. Still a little bit of ice, but it's going to be gone here pretty darn quick with the weather that we got coming in and with the warmer temps at this time of the year. So get out there, enjoy it, and we'll see you in the shop. Hey gang, if you like our content, hit the little subscribe button and the bell icon, and you'll be notified as soon as we put out new stuff.